You already know something is wrong. You've known for a while. Maybe months, maybe longer. The job drains you. The environment wears you down. You come home quieter than you left. And somewhere in the back of your mind, you've already quit. You just haven't done it yet. So why haven't you done it yet? It's not fear. It's not laziness. It's not that you don't believe in yourself. It's something much more specific than that. And once you see exactly what it is, everything starts making sense in a way that's almost uncomfortable. Here it is. In America, your health insurance doesn't come from the government. It doesn't follow you. It doesn't belong to you. It belongs to your job. The moment you leave, it leaves too. And that one fact, that single design choice, changes everything about how you behave at work. Everything. Think about what you're actually carrying when you go into that building every morning. You're not just carrying your skills. You're carrying your family's medical access, your kids' prescriptions, your spouse's doctor, the specialist your parents sees every few months. All of it tied to that one employer, that one manager, that one decision someone else gets to make about whether you stay or go. That's not a job. That's a leash. A very expensive, very well-designed leash, and the numbers make it impossible to ignore. Right now, the average American family pays close to $7,000 a year for their share of employer health coverage. Sounds manageable, right? Here's what nobody puts on the offer letter. Your employer is quietly covering nearly 3 times that amount on your behalf. Every single year. You never see it. You never touch it. But the second you resign, it's gone. All of it, overnight. So you're not just leaving a paycheck behind. You're walking away from what could be close to $20,000 a year in coverage your family has been depending on, without even knowing it. That's the trap, right there. That's the whole thing. Economists have studied this for years. They call it job lock. Workers who depend on employer coverage are significantly less likely to quit, less likely to negotiate, less likely to start something of their own, less likely to report problems. The insurance was sold to you as protection, but what it actually does is reduce your ability to move. It doesn't protect your health as much as it protects your employer's hold on you. And here's where it gets darker. You don't just become less likely to leave, you become less likely to speak. Not because anyone threatened you. Nobody has to. The calculation just runs itself now, automatically, in the background, like a program you didn't install but can't uninstall. You notice something wrong at work, and before you say a word, your brain already ran the math. What if this causes friction? What if friction becomes a write-up? What if a write-up becomes a quiet push toward the exit? And what happens to the plan if that happens? What happens to the appointment next month, the refill next week, the treatment that cannot be interrupted? So you say nothing. You absorb it, you move on, and you call it being professional. But what you're really doing is what the system was designed to get you to do. Staying quiet, staying put, staying. This is how leverage works when it's this elegant. Terno vilain. No threat, no dramatic moment. Just a structure that makes the cost of resistance too high for most people to pay. And so most people don't, now. People will tell you there are ways out. And there are, on paper. Te descobra, which lets you keep your employer's plan after you leave. What they don't mention up front is that you now pay the entire premium. Your share plus your employer's share plus administrative fees on top of that. For a family, that can land at $2,000 a month or more, sometimes closer to $2,500. You went from a manageable monthly deduction straight to a bill that rivals rent, with no income coming in, no end date in sight. That is not an escape route. That is a pressure cooker. Then there's the ACA marketplace, and yes, it exists. You can enroll after losing coverage. But here's what the sign-up page doesn't warn you about. The plan you find might not include your child's pediatrician. The medication your partner has been stable on for 2 years might need a completely new authorization process, or might not be covered at all. And you're figuring all of this out while simultaneously job hunting, watching your savings drain, explaining things to your family you don't fully understand yourself, and trying to make rational financial decisions during the single most irrational stretch of your adult life. That's not a choice. That's controlled chaos marketed as flexibility, and it does not hit every worker the same way. Someone with 8 months of savings experiences this very differently than someone with 8 days of runway. A healthy 28-year-old with no dependents faces a completely different calculation than a 55-year-old covering a spouse with a chronic condition. Workers in their 50s are in the most expensive years of their health and often the most vulnerable years of their career at the same time. Too young for Medicare. Too costly for the individual market to treat them fairly. Completely aware of both facts. The tighter your situation, the tighter the grip. That is not accidental, that is the architecture. Over a third of American workers have stayed in a job they wanted to leave specifically because of health coverage. Not because the pay was good enough. Not because the work was fulfilling, because leaving felt medically irresponsible. Because they had people depending on them who had no say in the decision. A spouse who didn't choose your employer. A child who doesn't know your manager's name. A parent who just needs the coverage to keep working, and you can't explain it to them properly. You can't sit your kid down and say the reason I come home like this every night is because your doctor's visits are what's keeping me at that desk. So you just stay, and you absorb it, and you protect them by disappearing a little more every year. Corporate culture has a phrase for this. They call it golden handcuffs. They say it like it's a reward, like you should feel lucky. But strip the gold off and tell me what you have left. You have handcuffs. And the only thing the gold does is make it harder to complain without sounding ungrateful. Here is the refrain that matters. Loyalty is a choice you make freely. Dependency is something built around you without your permission. When you stay because the work is meaningful, because the people are good, because you want to be there, that is loyalty. When you stay because the alternative means your family loses medical access and you spend the next 2 months in a paperwork nightmare while your savings disappear, that is not loyalty. That is leverage, being used against you, quietly, continuously, every single day. The Sunday night feeling. That weight. That low-level dread that sets in around 6 in the evening and doesn't really lift until Wednesday. Part of that isn't the job. Part of that is the insurance. It's the silent math your body runs before your mind even catches up. And if you're listening to this thinking that's not my situation, just answer one question honestly. If your coverage was gone tomorrow, would you still be there next week? If the answer is no, then it was never a job you were loyal to. It was a system you were locked into. And there is a very significant difference between those two things. One of them you chose, and one of them chose you first.